Well, hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Ask Jameen. I'm Nicci Willis and
I'm Jameen.
And all month we've been talking about Black History Month. We have been celebrating Black History Month and Black excellence, Black businesses, all that good stuff.
Star Power.
Black Star Power. Y'all know what it is. Speaking of stars, we're going to have the Oscars here in Las Vegas this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's in April. Anyway, I'm super excited about it. I don't know where I'm going to be, but the Oscars will be down the street. That's all I know. Okay. Back to the topic. We're going to talk about 5 ways that real estate can help close the racial wealth gap. All right, let's talk about it. Here we go. So today we are talking about 5 different ways that real estate can help close the racial wealth gap. And before we get started, I want to remind you to make sure you subscribe, hit that button right there in the corner, and hit that bell so that you are notified every time we upload new content. So let's get right into these 5 ways that real estate can close the racial wealth gap. And if you haven't already guessed it, it's definitely number 1, home ownership. But babe, let's get into the different ways that home ownership helps to close that racial wealth gap.
So here recently, well, not recently, probably in the last maybe 10 to 15 years, there's been a big debate on is your home an asset or is it a liability? And we can debate and we can go around, back and forth, all the way around the world.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is appreciation. So it doesn't matter if you view your house as an asset or a liability. A lot of financial people, whether it's Dave Ramsey or Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, they say that your house is a liability because it doesn't make you
money.
Cash flow.
Yeah.
That sounds great, but if you look at the racial wealth gap, one of the big differences is home ownership. And we're breaking down why. So the number 1 thing is appreciation.
Yeah.
So basically, like the chart that I have on my computer, I looked at 1940 to 2000. I stopped at 2020.
Okay.
And it goes straight up. So it's just like the stock market. It may go down.
Yeah.
But it's going to come
back
back
up.
Yeah, it's going to eventually go back up.
Tick up.
And when it goes up, it's going to be higher than it was before it went down.
Yep.
So appreciation provides so many opportunities and so many options for people in general when we're talking minorities or we're talking race-wise. If our lack of home ownership, our home ownership rates are low. So those opportunities aren't provided. So appreciation is your house going up in value.
Yeah.
So you don't have a house that can go up in value. You can sell the house and have a lump sum of money to open a business.
Yeah.
Or send your kids to college.
Yeah.
Or refinance and buy a bigger house. Or just have something, period, that goes up in value.
Right.
Whether you look at your house as an asset or a liability, in the history of real estate, it's pretty much, the market may go down, it may even tank, but it's going to come back up. So you're going to, the difference between, it's point blank period, the difference between having something that goes up in value and not having something that goes up in value. So appreciation, that's the big thing. That's probably like the number 1 biggest thing that creates a wealth gap in between, however you say it, Black people, African American minorities, and other races who have a high home ownership rate.
That's so true. I mean, like you said, putting kids through college or buying something bigger or starting your business. Like some people, put their house up as collateral.
Yeah.
If you don't have a house, for collateral, sometimes that can make a big difference between having the startup costs that you need. So that has been a great debate, of real estate experts, financial experts, all the things. But I agree with you that appreciation matters, and whether you have a house that is income producing or not, that appreciation does matter. So if you've if you purchase something, even when you've seen what we saw in 2009, those people who held on to it now, oh my goodness, right? A lot of people purchased houses in 2009, and they saw a drastic increase. If you purchased your house before 2009 and you saw that drop, and everybody's pulling their hair out and freaking out, but if you held on to it from 2009 till now, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have seen if you haven't seen what your house is worth, you need to go do that now. Because it's huge now. So
and you have to look at you have to look at it from, you have to just look at it from a racial standpoint. The people that say that a house is a liability and not an asset, when we're talking about wealth, they have another source of wealth.
Income.
Because so to be honest, your house shouldn't be, or it doesn't have to be, what they say the greatest investment that you'll make. But those people who say that your house is a liability, they have another investment that's greater than real estate.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from that standpoint. So if you
compare apples to apples, is what we're saying.
Elon Musk sold all his houses. He just rents. But guess what? He has a multi-billion-dollar company.
He's got Tesla.
That makes a difference. So if you don't have Tesla or some other asset, whether it be stocks or a business or something like that, this is one of the greatest ways that you can provide wealth for yourself and for your family and leave a legacy. So you have to really look at that. So the second thing is, and it's close to appreciation, is equity. So the difference between appreciation and equity, appreciation is your property going up in value.
Right.
Equity is the difference between what you owe, or if you owe, and what the real estate is worth. So that's the second thing too, is when you rent, you don't pay down anything.
Right.
So when you own, if you have a mortgage, you're actually paying down that what you would call a liability, the mortgage or the debt or whatever. And so it's the difference between what the property is worth and what you owe, and that's the equity on there.
Yeah.
So that's another advantage too.
Yeah. I've also seen now, as part of the great debate, as far as
Mm-hmm.
equity, and you don't own the house, or technically own the house until it's paid off. That's how do you feel about that? I'm gonna ask you, how do you feel about that, in addition to the whole appreciation debate, and if your house is not a income property, then it's a liability, but then people are also saying, well, you don't own the house until it's fully paid off. How do you feel about that? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, we'll get into it later, but one thing I can say is, being an investor, like a real estate investor, and having rental property and things like that, it's great. Of course, I recommend it because I do it, we do it. We talk about it on this podcast, but it's not for everybody. There's a whole lot of ways that you can make money or invest other than real estate. And it's like, I don't want to say it's a trap, but don't fall for that either. Being a homeowner with a mortgage, from a financial standpoint, and we're talking about closing the wealth gap, is better than renting.
Because renting is some cost.
So let's get into it. So, okay, let's just compare it. So if you own a house, your house goes up in value. You don't have that when you rent. So that's one check mark on homeownership, 0 on renting. Then you have equity. So if you go ahead and get a mortgage, yes, you do have debt, you have a mortgage, your monthly payment, But when you make every mortgage payment that you pay, and when you start out, the first couple payments mostly go towards interest, and after like year 3, you start paying more towards the principal.
Right.
So when you have a mortgage, every mortgage payment that you make, even though it's a small amount starting out, you're paying down something. So you're creating equity.
Very true.
When you rent, there is no equity.
Right.
So there's another plus on home ownership, 0 on renting. So let's go to number 3. Number 3 is tax advantages of being a homeowner. So you get the write-off even though you have a mortgage. So if you buy a property cash outright, you can't write off the interest because you're not paying any interest.
Right.
So let's say you're you just graduated from college. You're 21, 22 years old. You don't have any kids, so you don't have the write-off of having children.
No dependents, yeah.
So if you rent property, you can't take advantage of writing off the interest. So if you buy a home, have a mortgage, all of the interest that you pay is tax deductible. So it's like having an extra child when you go to file your taxes. So
did you know your home is a dependent?
Right. So you're able to write off that interest, and if you rent, you don't have that advantage there. So that's another thing. And then the last thing is, some people look at it as a liability, and I get it. If you're talking about like accounting, it doesn't balance out. Of course, it doesn't balance out, but a housing expense, whether you rent or buy, is a housing expense.
Yeah.
Unless you house hack or have a multifamily, now that's a totally different thing, and that's going on something else. But the last thing is, it's an asset that you can transfer. Like, I can't transfer over my rental lease to my children.
Right.
I can transfer over property that can eventually be paid off, or be a rental property and be purely an asset to my children, to my grandchildren, or whoever I deem to will the property to, and you just can't do those things with rent. So I would say don't fall for that trap, because owning a house with a mortgage and it's not all the way yours, and from what we just went over, it's better than just renting.
Absolutely.
Now, there are certain reasons why you don't. Nothing is wrong with renting. There's certain reasons why you may not want to buy, or you want to put off buying. But if you're just comparing it just generally, don't fall for that trap.
Don't fall for the hype. Don't fall for the hype, and make sure you are comparing apples to apples. I think that's probably where we can leave it. Yeah. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're talking, what's a liability versus an asset, what's a good investment versus not a good investment, what's going to be your primary home versus not, what you're going to do with that home. Make sure you're comparing apples to apples when you're listening to all the hype that's out there. Okay. All right. Okay. So that's number 1, just home ownership, period. But there are some other ways within real estate. So let's talk about.
Let me do one more thing.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So if you look at, we're talking about the racial gap. So there's a huge racial gap, and there's a whole bunch of different ways. So let's just say whites and blacks or minorities. If you say, okay, there's this big racial gap in between us, you have to break down why. What's the difference? Yeah. So if you look at non-minorities or whites, a large percentage of them are homeowners. Yes. So if you just look from a number standpoint, let's break down what do they do and what don't we do. And you have to break that down and say, oh, okay, that's how you solve any problem. Yeah. You just break it down. Start by looking at it. If home ownership is a big thing that this particular wealthy population do or have, you have to look at that. So if you look at home ownership in African Americans and minorities, it's really low. And you talk about the net worth of African American as a people is 0, or you know what I mean? It's about to be lower. So you have to look at that. So that's just numbers and facts and figures right there.
Yeah, so true. So we talked specifically about home ownership, and that's number 1. But let's talk even more ways. We've got some other ways that you can close the racial wealth gap, and another way is through investing.
Absolutely. So I am a huge advocate for investing in real estate. Yeah. Because Even if you look at your primary residence as a liability, you can't look at real estate as an investment as a liability because it either provides cash flow or a lump sum of money.
Right.
So the first thing is cash flow. So if you can invest in real estate, it's like you have a property or a rental property or whatever, but it's just another source of cash flow.
Yes.
So it's a second job without punching a clock.
Yeah.
Is
passive
getting
income,
dividends on a stock without having to work for it. So that monthly income is a great help, even if it's a couple $100s a month.
Yeah.
It makes
a difference.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference, especially when you don't have to physically be somewhere and do something to provide extra income. And if you look at the racial gap, a lot of non-minorities have a second home, whether they rent it out Airbnb or they have rental property. They have more than one property than their primary residence, and so that provides additional income.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, there's also with investing, there is appreciation as well. When you purchase that rental home and you are getting that income, again, whether it's a couple $100, whether, you're clearing 1,000, whatever it is, but you're getting that, but then you're also getting that appreciation as well. You're getting the interest, like you said, even with your primary home, you can get that also with this. With your investments and things like that. Depreciation.
Yeah, so that's two things. There's appreciation and then there's
depreciation.
So let's go over that real quick. One of the major aha moments for me in real estate is I had a client. He worked at Procter & Gamble. He worked at P&G. And he bought some cheap little rental properties. This was, back in Cincinnati. He bought some cheap rental properties and he had like 13 of them.
Okay.
And so he bought those properties when he was younger for like $20,000, $30,000 when real estate was really cheap.
Right.
And so he paid them all off. And when he retired from Procter & Gamble, he had that appreciation. Those properties that he bought for $20,000, $30,000 were now worth $80,000, $100,000, $130,000. And I was fortunate to meet him right in the middle of the process of him selling the properties. And I sold probably his last 5 of them. But he told me what he paid for each property and he took advantage of that appreciation. So when he was ready to retire, he said, no, I don't even want to be a landlord anymore. He didn't have a property manager. He sold those properties and that was a big nest egg for him to be able to retire. So those properties are going up in value, and those are all rental properties, not primary residence. Those are all rental properties. So he kept them, rent them out, and they went up in value until he retired. And when he retired, he had a big nest egg to retire on. So depreciation it's I don't want to say it's a tax loophole, but it's just something that we can take advantage of. So tax wise, you buy a house and it actually goes up in value,
right?
But for tax purposes, they're saying this property is no longer 2 years old; it's 3 years old. So you're able to claim depreciation, basically saying things are getting older,
right? Like the roof, right?
They're going down in value, but in reality, in real life, it's going up. But tax-wise, you're able to get a tax break on it being older or depreciating in value, which in real life is not true, but in tax-wise, yes, we'll take it.
Sure is.
Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah. So, quick side note: make sure you get an accountant that understands real estate if you are investing in real estate, and even as a homeowner, make sure you have a tax professional that understands real estate.
Yeah.
That was it. That's my little side note. Okay, let's talk about, we're still talking investing.
Yep.
Investments are willable.
Absolutely. So the great thing about having real estate is you can put it in your will. You can transfer it to your kids. And like I said, every rental property is like a separate company. It's like a business. So you're actually giving that business away to your children or whoever your heirs are. It's something of value that you can pass on to somebody else. And when we're talking about the wealth gap, a lot of us, now this wasn't my experience, and I don't think it was your experience either, but a lot of people in our culture, when you turn 18, we're considered grown.
Oh, grown.
And we get kicked out the house.
Ooh, thank you, Mom, and Dad for not kicking me out.
So, but a lot of minorities and African Americans have to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. We don't have an inheritance. We don't have rental properties. We don't have a business to take over from our parents.
Right.
We're starting from scratch, building our own
first
wealth,
generation, a lot of things,
our own legacies and things like that. So to have something valuable that you can will to your children or your heirs, so they don't have to start from nothing or start from scratch like you did, is a huge plus, and that closes the wealth gap.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at your primary residence as a liability, this is a pure asset. So for all you, Dave Ramsey and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I get it. They look at it as an asset. Rental property as an asset. If you have a mortgage, the rent is higher than the mortgage. So it's an asset versus a liability. So that's the advantage of having a rental property or investment property. It's just an asset versus a liability if you view your primary residence as a liability.
Mm-hmm. Let's keep talking about assets.
Yeah.
Assets versus owner-occupied in investing.
Yeah. So if you owner-occupied, yes, you're taking up the space. So if you convert it to a business, I guess, you own a McDonald's, but you eat McDonald's, so it balances out. So I guess that's how you would look at it, as a liability and not an asset. So if you, like I said before, if you look at like the rich dad, poor dad theory that your primary residence is a liability, a rental property or investment property is purely an asset and not a liability on there. Yeah.
Okay, so number 1, homeownership. Number 2, investments. Number 3, let's talk about trust. We don't talk about trust enough. So let's dive into this really quickly. Let's talk about how to do trust, why we do them, all that stuff.
So for those of you that are TV fans, or we watch the TV show Power, and we see...
We watch all the Powers. Let me just say, we watch them all.
But in the first one, the Power Ghost one, so the main character in the Power series, he dies. We think he's still alive, though. But anyways, that's not the point. So the guy dies, and he has a will, and he has a trust fund set up for his kids. And in that trust fund, he specifies what he wants done
in order for them to get the trust.
What's in the trust. Yeah, what's in the trust. So a trust is a legal document, and it has stipulations on what the person who is willing something over or giving something over, what they want done and how they want it done. Now, what's the point of doing that? So I've seen in my career time and time again, families fight over not even real estate, just things in general. Money, real estate, clothes, cars. When a person dies or passes away, a trust prevents people from fighting over those items. So a lot of us don't put our assets, whether it be real estate or anything else, in a trust because it specifies what you want done. So you don't have to assume what Big Mama wishes were. It's spelled out right there in the trust. It's black
and white.
And so
always put things in black and white.
Unfortunately, because of lack of education, lack of knowledge, lack of knowing what to do financially, a lot of people, when their parent or grandparent passes away, they have a lack of knowledge of how to properly manage an asset, and a trust helps with that. So when you have a trust, it prevents family members from fighting over property and money and things like that. And so the asset is able to stay in the family, or it allows it to continually be an asset for the family. So that's a major thing that we have to do, is starting to put real estate and businesses and things like that in a trust, because that's what happens. You have some matriarch or patriarch of a business, or somebody comes up with a wonderful idea,
done all this wonderful work,
and then when they pass, it goes no further than them. The family fights over the business, or they can't take over the business, or they can't keep up the property, and then all that hard work, their legacy kind of goes to waste. So one of the major ways that we can close the wealth gap is putting our real estate assets in a trust. Yep.
All right. You know what? We should do something we should dive deep into that. I'm gonna put a pin in this. Y'all remind me. Put it in the comments. I'm gonna put a pin in this because I want to talk even more about trust and wills and things like that.
Yeah, just got one more thing to say about trust.
Oh, go ahead.
You know how they say the apple doesn't fall far from the tree? A lot of times it does when it comes to financial matters and financial literacy. You have some person who started this business, but the children or the heirs or the brothers and sisters, it falls far away.
They can't pick it up. They can't. And we talked about that.
They can't implement it, and the trust helps out with that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as having conversations about money and finances and all that stuff, having a conversation about trust and wills, and we got to talk about it. We're not going to be here forever. And real estate is one of those things. It's a great investment. You know, we've talked about all this stuff, appreciation, equity, all the things, but we have to teach our kids too. We have to, we're even starting more, conversations with our kids about money, about financial literacy, all that stuff. So we're going to have some more talks about this topic and about trusts and wills and things like that and how it pertains to real estate. Yes. Okay. So y'all go ahead and stay tuned, but hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss it when we do it. But I think that's going to be a good topic because we need to have more conversations about it, more conversations with our kids, all the things. But right now we're talking about 5 ways that real estate can close the racial wealth gap. Let's get into number 4. Let's just talk about it holistically, and let's talk about stability.
Yeah.
Stability.
So I think this is probably like one of the most overlooked aspects of home ownership and wealth. So I'm going to kind of break it down so where we can kind of understand it. So if you stay put, it's cheaper to keep her. Like they say, marriage is cheaper to keep her. So it's very expensive to move.
Yeah.
You got inflation. You have moving companies, expenses going up. You got new furniture to buy. Things getting damaged, things getting broken when you move. So if you're a homeowner, homeownership is a little bit more of a permanent situation. Yes, you may move in 5 years, but it provides stability for you. It provides stability for your family. So every month when you have a lease expiring, you move again. So that's another deposit. That's another moving company. That's replacing things that get damaged or get broke. So it's very expensive to move.
Yeah.
And so home ownership provides stability on a financial aspect because it's expensive to move.
Yeah.
Another financial aspect of it is there are a few things that do change that will make a mortgage different. But for the most part, if you get a 30-year fixed rate, you know exactly what your housing expense is every month. When you rent, you go from 1 year to the next year. They do rental increases. They raise the rent on there, and it gets more expensive to rent. So yes, you have taxes can go up, but they don't go up every single year. Here in Las Vegas, we have HOAs or Homeownership Association fees. Those do go up from time to time, but it's not going to be like 1 month your mortgage is $1,000 and then next month is like $1,500.
Right.
So for the most part, you know exactly what your mortgage is going to be, and that provides stability because you're allowed to, allow yourself to budget when you know what the number is going to be every month and year over year, pretty much.
Yeah. You know what, on that tip, I want to add too, if you're a control freak or a recovering control freak like I am, ownership does also give you a sense of control too, because what a lot of people are running into is, oh my goodness, I've been renting this house for X amount of years. Now the owner wants to sell.
Right.
And now we have X amount of days to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that time and time again where those who are renters are now scrambling because, you know, the homeowner has gotten a great deal on their home, and they're ready to sell it. They've gotten cash or whatever it is for it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that appreciation, they're ready to cash in. And now the renter is scrambling. So you're talking about stability, having, you know, you have that better sense of control. For the most part, you can decide when you want to move. You can decide when you want to sell or not sell, and you want to hold or whatever, but you have a better sense of control when you own. Same thing for, you talked about HOAs. That brought up a good point. You don't have any say, those of you who are renting a home, of, you know, what the HOA does and all those things. But when you are a homeowner, you have interest. You have an interest or a part of that HOA. You can go and become president if you want to of the HOA. You know, you can have a say, you know, because you now have, you know, a stake. There it is, a stake in what the HOA is doing. So those types of things also help provide, you know, more stability and things like that. So again, that's more of a holistic level.
But it's really not either. I mean, when you talk about wealth is not just money. Wealth is having control. Like you said, that was a great point. So wealth is having control, and also wealth is having time. So wealth is not just money.
That's right.
What's the difference between a rich person and a wealthy person? A wealthy person has the money with time. A rich person could just make a whole lot of money, but they still have the time to make.
They're exchanging their time for money.
Yeah.
But wealth, you making money in your sleep.
Yeah.
You making your children and your grandchildren money in your sleep.
Yeah, so wealth is having a say. So from being able to vote on the HOA, what goes on where you live, and also being able to be part of the board, from being just a secretary all the way up to being the HOA president.
Absolutely.
You're in a power position. So that was a great point.
You have a say. You have a say. So that ownership is important with regard to that as well.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, this is getting good. Okay, so
one more thing on stability.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
One more thing on stability. So stability also helps in the aspect of, if you stay put somewhere, it gives you time to form relationships. And those relationships that you form provide opportunities, which in turn provide you with wealth, from scholarships with your kids to networking opportunities, people who you bowl with, or people who you go to church with. When you're constantly renting and moving from place to place to place, it's harder for you to form those relationships and network, and you kind of miss out on opportunities because you're in a lot of different places, or you can be in a lot of different places. So it helps with your children as far as being in the same schools, not have to switch schools a lot. If you switch schools, it provides a sense of community. So the stability aspect is another part of wealth is who you know. Is not also like, and
who knows you.
Yeah, and who knows you. So wealth is also networking and contacts and relationships that you have. Relationships can go a long way.
Facts.
Yeah.
All right, so stability is number 4. Let's go to number 5, and let's talk economics.
Yeah, so especially with wealth, from an economic standpoint, when we're talking about real estate, whether you own real estate to live in or it's an investment, you can support minorities. You can support African-owned businesses, from painters to landscapers to movers to general contractors. You can support other minority-owned businesses. You can support people like us, minority-owned real estate companies, realtors, mortgage companies. And so that creates the economy to where wealth in African Americans and minorities are spread out, instead of just leaving the community immediately as soon as you get that money. So if the real estate aspect of it is, the economics aspects of it is, you can't support somebody if you don't have the opportunity. And real estate, whether it be your primary residence or rental property provides the opportunity for you to support somebody and to help divide that wealth.
Yeah. I mean, currency comes from the root word current, which means it flows.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have ownership, when you own something, you're able to provide those opportunities to have money flow through your hand, have money flow through, your property, and you get to decide, you get to choose who you want to support, who you want to give your business to. And like you said, that just helps spread that wealth even more. Yeah. So definitely economics. But all 5 of these you can, glean from, you can take, mm-hmm. I want you to share this video. I really do. Go ahead and click that share button. Share with your friends, share with your family, sit your kids down, sit your teenagers down, and just kind of go through this and say, hey, we're going to make a decision to, help this family and help generations, because that's how it works. You're talking about community. We want to help not just our family, we want to help other families and friends, and we want to help our community. So go ahead and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Please hit that button so that you're notified every time we upload new content. All right, guys. Well, this has been another episode of Ask Jameen, where we are celebrating Black history, Black excellence, Black businesses all month long. All right, guys, have a great one, and we'll see you next time. Bye.